I see no trajectory in which Palantir slows down in doing that. It's definitely going up and to the right. So from my perspective, the thing I would try to convince investors of is like, we shave millions off the cost, we shave years off the delivery, and we grow with them, because now is the time to get in here. In 2 years from now, you're going to be competing against everyone in this space. And right now you have a unique opportunity.
Our leadership believes that the next best startup will be built on Palantir. And I think, sometimes that's been phrased as, the next Palantir will be built on Palantir.
You have one platform that can do it all, and it gives you the tooling that allows someone that maybe hasn't been writing code their entire lives to build something of value and solve an important problem that they're facing.
You can build entirely outside of the platform and still use the ontology and the assets that you've developed, the agents that you've developed in the platform from your external application. So platform APIs and ontology SDK have actually grown the optionality and variability to what workflows you can do.
This was the thing when I heard about it. I was like, oh, finally, we have an answer to like, where does Foundry fit in my stack? I think it changed the game almost overnight. It really unblocked a lot of the resistance I would typically get from the CIO or the CDO or CTO.
We would be hypocritical if we weren't also thinking about ways to skill and kind of increase the efficiency of our own internal engineers, while also doing that with our customers. And so, AI FDE was a way for us to do that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Code and Connor podcast. My name is Connor Deeks, CEO of CodeStrap, and I'm joined, as always, with the great CodeStrap himself and CTO, Dorian Smiley. We're going to be bringing you guys the latest and greatest around Palantir, the tech, the company, the community. We'll also be discussing insights on other companies, what's happening in the world of AI, of data, of consulting, of investing, in any meaningful topic that requires attention. The focus of today's episode is the developer community around Palantir, its growth, and the efforts to grow it further. We're joined today by Zoë Nengite. Zoë is a forward-deployed engineer at Palantir and has spent the last few years supporting the developer community, which is people who are building in the platform independently. Over the last 5 years at Palantir, Zoë has embedded with almost every industry Palantir operates in, most notably working with manufacturing customers from paper manufacturing to battery making. As part of Palantir's internal BD architecture team, Zoë has worked with all levels of seniority at her customers to drive operational value. Zoë, once again, welcome to Code and Connor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. It's great to have you.
First topic on the docket is how is Palantir attracting developers to their platforms?
Cool. Well, it's a really good question. And I think the very first way that we've done this is just by giving access, right? I think before you needed to sort of be quite a large enterprise customer and have a deep engagement with Palantir to really get access to the platform. And I think one of our earlier critiques was actually in hey, how does your platform integrate with other software solutions, and how do I, as a developer, where my company is invested in this software, how do I learn the platform? How do I build what I need to for my day-to-day job? And so I think one of the first things our leadership did, I think 2 years ago now, was really to release developer tier. So it's like individual developer licenses where you can get access directly to AIP and Foundry and really build out the ontology for yourself. And so that has unlocked individual kind of projects, and even some people in college and universities who are building in the platform as a way to actually as part of their course when they're studying. We also use it for hiring purposes as well. So actually, when we're working with kind of prospective candidates, they go on the developer tier to learn the platform and actually learn before they're on the job. But we've seen a huge host of people really investing in hey, I get to with a few clicks get access to this software that I never had before, and that's been the first step. It's sort of opening the doors of access, and then I think as we'll continue to talk about, it's all the resources that come with that. It's okay, now I can log in and I have access, but where do I go? And so we've invested a lot in, okay, well, what is that first step once you're in the platform, and how do you get started?
I really appreciate the speed runs on the training site to get people oriented. That's kind of what I recommend. Just first thing, once you get into your stack, go take the speed run to kind of build the mental map around the platform. I also always try to tell developers Foundry is a massive platform. You're not going to learn this thing in a week. It's more like learning AWS. This is a multi-year journey. You're going to go through multiple levels of certification. You're going to have to be working on it hands-on a daily basis kind of thing. And so it's like, I think developers have the expectation like this is a Databricks or a Snowflake. I'm like, no. Here, this is not. This is like a replacement for AWS. It's a full platform to build just about anything you could imagine. And now we even have things like what the OSDK team has been working on that are these NPM packages where you can even orchestrate Foundry and drive a lot of the users or drive a lot of the behaviors in Foundry via the APIs that are wrapped in these SDKs. How do you see like when developers get into the platform, how do you see this challenge around like getting them to get on the right mindset to learn the platform so that they commit to this like, multi-year step by step, here's how you're going to do this. Like, how do you approach that problem?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a great thing there around our Learn portal. There are these different tracks that you take. Not one builder or engineer is going to have the same journey. And so I think that the one thing that we try to advise, especially on kind of the developer community team, is really start with the use case and work backwards. Like I think if you take this as I need to be an expert in one particular application, or I need to deep dive on what agent building looks like. There are ways that you can learn that way, but I think with such a vast platform, you really have to take it step by step and use case by use case. And so starting with, okay, this is the outcome that I want to see in the platform, and then actually what are the building blocks that we need to get there? And some of that is, how do we educate and sort of bring that Palantir knowledge or Palantir way of doing things? How do we externalize that? But I think there's also ways that you can do it through the platform itself. So Solution Designer is a very good example of this. This was our way of, okay, actually, when we're building against a use case and figuring out which applications in the platform you tie together to achieve that, it's essentially a solution design. You're building the architecture of the solution, and then you're probably working with other engineers to get that shared outcome. And so it's okay, well, we can build a product around that. And that's where kind of the birth of Solution Designer was. It was one, a way for us to explain what we had built to our customers, but it's also a great way to build from the ground up if you're a developer. And so I'm seeing a lot of Palantir using Solution Designer, but I really see the developer community utilizing it as a framework and rubric for how to build in the platform.
Well, Solution Designer's gotten way better too, where you can actually create the design based on what you built. So you kind of go bi-directional in that way. You can design it before you build or create it after you've at least started building, which is pretty phenomenal. Because when you want to give like a bird's eye view of the solution, data lineage sometimes leaves a little bit wanting, whereas Solution Designer provides, and then documentation, right, man? Being able to explain why and how you build something, Solution Designer is a great microservice for that.
Well, what we're finding in the AI space too, like we're building an AI coding solution for our company to help supercharge building a natural language interface for the web. Separate conversation, but what we're finding is that giving AI the appropriate context to help in, engineering whatever it is you're doing, it needs a lot of information about how you operate and what is there. And Solution Designer being able to be the sort of mental model for AI as we start to explore AI FDEs and AI coding. I think these meta tools are going to become like super, super important, not only for the humans so they can understand what's going on, but for AI. Workflow Builder is also an awesome tool that understanding permissioning was really hard in some of these, systems before, especially as they get really big. Like once you're into like a production system and there's dozens of workshop modules and potentially, maybe 100 questions, who knows how many functions have been written. Having a tool that allows you to like explore like, oh, what are the permissions on this thing? Can this person access this other thing over here? How do they all work together and relate? That was huge. Kudos to Cameron Kahn. I think he was team built Workflow Builder, I'm pretty sure.
The initial goal was how do we sort of get a view of the components of an application or workshop application, and then see what the ontology objects that are back this, the functions, the logic functions, which models do the logic functions use, and over time, the initial was just like what's the almost like backbone of this workshop application, but now it's actually more of a central management platform for how do I manage a business function that's being used across several applications. And as we talk about the compounding value of the ontology, you also have to have a way to manage the compounding value. And Workflow Builder is that command center. And again, these are things where that was developed over the last few years, and that's been really hand in hand with our investment in developers, because this is a tool like for developers.
one thing you mentioned was being outcomes focused. I think that is the right way to approach it, because like you don't want them to go down the rabbit hole of documentation to spend all day like, oh, look at all these things, like get lost in it. It's like, no, work backwards from a problem you want to solve. Make sure that problem's like a valuable problem to solve. This is something Connor's been super passionate about as well. It's like when we go into a customer, we're really trying to teach them like how to be business led and tech enabled, and sort of have this mindset that we are here to achieve an outcome the business actually cares about. One of the things that'd be interesting in the developer community, Connor, if you want to pull up the community site, but like is adding a section about this. Like, can there be a section in here where we can trade stories or understanding how we're presenting to the business as engineers? Because it's not a natural skill as an engineer to like go in and make a business case, or partner with someone on the business side to make that case. Maybe if you're an engineer, senior engineer that works with a product owner, maybe I could see that that's the closest dynamic that I know of that's like that.
Zoe, you mentioned this where you see like students that'll actually get a dev stack and then they'll post, and like you guys at Palantir have hired some of them, or individual clients are looking at them, and then the efforts with American Tech Fellowship, which we'll get to. But if students can design a business problem that they're trying to solve to try and make a product that is potentially marketable, I guarantee you business professionals who have spent years in their given function can do the same.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is actually it's very funny. Vincent F there is on my team and is by far the global leader of responses in the community forum. Maybe let me talk about the community forum. So this is another one of our developer resources that really provides, almost like Stack Overflow or any similar kind of open source tooling, an open forum for asking questions. And really, when you get stuck, or even suggestions and topics around, hey, this is a feature or product area that I would like to have, to basically just start a discussion around. So what you can do through this forum is get access to support and have your, kind of where you get stuck, have the community answer those questions. But you'll see that a ton of people here are, whether they're Palantir engineers or product developers at Palantir themselves, but we have partners and others who are very, very active in the forum, super users at some of our customers. And so it really enables a platform for asking and answering questions. I see someone from Ontology is there, is number 8. Like, that's another one of our partners that's very active in the forum. But, to my second point around starting a conversation, we've had topics that have been, hey, we've had one of our leads on the product side at Palantir start a topic on, hey, we are building our T planning. Like, it's something they do kind of 3 times a year. The plan always gets disrupted. So don't worry, we are doing more iteration than that. But we've started a conversation on, what do you want to see? What does the community want to be put on the roadmap? And we have put on things and implemented them at kind of the advice and push of the community forum. So I think there is that area for starting a discussion. Specifically, what you're asking about is, how do you build the like business acumen and business orientation? Because that's going to be a key part to getting success in the platform. And I actually think this touches on a much wider conversation about what is forward deployed engineering. And forward deployed engineering really started at Palantir, which is why our product requires you to basically be a forward deployed engineer to really get value. And it is really embedding and feeling the pain of your customer and then building against that to solve a problem. And you can only do that if you are deeply embedded with the people on the ground who are doing this every day. I think where business and IT can feel really separate, like that's where you get use cases that don't necessarily hit the mark, or you spend ages trying to figure out adoption because the people on the ground are sort of like, hey, this is different from what I actually need. And I think forward deployed engineering done right is when you can almost assume the problems of your customer such that they're your problems and then you can solve them because you also kind of have that technical background. And it's about iteration. I think, we talk about development cycles and agile, and it's sort of like, hey, well, let's not get a framework for it because what you need for every project is going to be different. But once you are deeply embedded and iterating on a very quick pace, right, with your customers, that's like where outcomes actually come from, and you're building against that outcome and working from there.
But what I would love is those like one of these sections where it's like forward deployed engineering support, and I could go in and I could be like, I'm having this problem with the person that owns this spreadsheet that I'm trying to replace with Foundry, and they won't allow me to have access to the data they're using. Or like, how can I convince them that like this is a positive good for their life if we're able to like replace this spreadsheet with the Foundry alternative? Because there's all these interesting ways you learn to interact with people as you do this exercise. And it's not the traditional challenges you might have as an engineer where you're fighting software and complexity. It's more like you're fighting human nature, or like, you're having a hard time articulating to the person who's the decision maker and convincing them that your idea is a good idea. Being able to get support from experts at Palantir, because you guys are the professionals of this. You created this concept. Being able to get support from Palantir to be able to like make better arguments. I was on a call with Ted the other day, and I remember explicitly like we were all obsessing over like, how do we convince this person who owns this data asset to like, that Palantir is like going to align with their data architecture. And Ted flipped it because like, why are we talking to this person? Why are we not talking to the person who wants to take 20% of cost out of the business? Where is that person? Like, and I was just like, oh yeah, makes perfect sense.
Well, I mean, a lot of organizations are hamstrung, or the people that want to change inside of an organization, I should be more specific, are hamstrung by those target architectures. You'll quantify the business value, you have the business group aligned to like change something, and then the organizational gravity of like having to outsource any type of build to IT and their target architectures then obfuscates away the whole mission of what you're trying to do. And I think, just like you said, Dorian, Palantir revolutionized this ability to like break down those barriers and get to the build and get to the value. So how do we upskill, or how do we train the masses in the forward deployed engineer approach?
And like American Tech Fellowship too is maybe attempting to do this too. Like the American Tech Fellowship, I think it's a program now where you're reskilling blue collar workers in Foundry and allowing them to, gain the skills to be effective in their org and go out and like use Foundry to affect change.
Who better to solve the problems and again, the people who are on the ground in these situations every day. If we're trying to build operational software that can be used all the way from on the production line and factory floor all the way through to being used in C-suite meetings, it's like, okay, well, like we also need to be able to be accessible to these engineers as well. And I think there is this, I think through AI in general, like reskilling that's happening. And I think the American Tech Fellowship has really been that for Palantir. It's like, okay, take the people who are already very knowledgeable in the problem set. They are technical in nature, and then let's put them through the opportunity to reskill and double down on like what they can do using AI. And I think this goes to show like one, that the platform has come so far and is really accessible to people who aren't Palantir engineers, such that a blue collar worker or someone who's more on the like manufacturing side of things can come in and be deeply technical within the platform. And so we've seen huge success from this program, and people who have gone through this program to then go and work at our customers, because who's using Palantir and getting value? It's our customers, and we have that network, and providing this sort of funnel into our customers has been, a huge kind of upside for us.
As far as the American Tech Fellowship, do you have to be invited to go to this? Is it just applied? Do you have to have a certain specification criteria met? Because we say a blue collar worker, do we really mean a blue collar worker, or do we mean some type of technologist who works at a company that manufactures something?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the application's open to all. Like if you hit get started there, that would like trigger the process, and you would put in your information. And we've had a lot of inbound requests. Some of it has been, hey, we work with that customer, and so we know the engineer that we think might be good for this. And so then, of course, it's going to be a referral based application, very much how people do hiring in general. Some of it's going to be through inbound requests, others through referral, but everyone's application is very much treated the same. I wouldn't get too hung up on what the background needs to look like, but more what the ambition and sort of that like grit that you need to have to reskill and to change fields and figure out like what your next thing looks like. It is, as it says here, a high intensity training program, and the promise is when you finish the program that we'll support with job placement, which we have. And so it's okay, well, do you have the dedication to go through a program like that? and the will to do that.
In an environment right now where we're seeing specifically like software developers, this was just released. I don't have the article in front of me, but like getting a job as a software developer, particularly out of university, is kind of a nightmare. And that's probably being felt in a lot of different industries. So I don't see many opportunities where a company is willing to put someone through upskilling and then get them a job.
We need more of those though. Like we really do. There was a time when it was way more common. We need to get back to that more. I think using universities for, credentialing people to go get a job is probably a bad idea. The return on investment's been really poor. I like apprenticeship models a lot. There's a lot of compelling apprenticeships out there, even in the software space. I've been advocating for a long time that we sort of need to expand it, which is why I was so excited when I heard about the tech fellowship, because I was like, finally, someone's doing something about this and hooking it up. The most important part, hooking it up to a hiring pipeline, right? So that gives you an actual path to a job, right? Like more companies need to do this. You would think like if you're a technology company and you're not doing this, you're crazy, because you could really expand the number of people who can use your technology, help your customers, and bring, help them tap into a much broader and better hiring pool. But interesting thing about Palantir that differs from other companies, though, is most of those other companies are pure technology platforms, meaning you have to be a software engineer. And this, by definition, is going to restrict the pool of people who are going to participate. With Palantir, you can be a software engineer and be a force multiplier, in my opinion, but you can also be a citizen engineer and solve really compelling problems and deliver outcomes that matter. But you now have this cohort of like, okay, are you more of a citizen engineer? Are you more of a software engineer? And then how do you pair them together and get the ways of working where they amplify the value that each other brings to the equation? So I was like, I think about this all the time because like our job is to help enable our customers. I was wondering what you think about like those dynamics, how it affects conferences, how it changes the way you build your offerings to build the community. Like, what do you think of those things?
Yeah, I had a customer say to me once, I'm sort of technical enough to be dangerous in the platform, but not technical enough that I could do this outside of the platform. And I think that has really stuck with me as well. I think, if you are a deeply technical person, there is a home for you in the platform as well. You can build everything code-based, get the custom configurations you need, integrations with other software products, and figuring out how to use the Ontology SDK as a means to kind of power your third-party application. But if you're a low-code builder that, again, has an outcome that they're driving against, you're not limited. And that's the difference. I think there's a lot of software products that either give you a very narrow view of what you can do if you're in the low-code building side, or they're, sort of like you have to be on something, a pro code tool or something like that. But I think what we do is really expand the range of what it means to be a builder in the platform, and that's the thing we're always trying to push to the edges. And again, with other software products like AI FDE or AIP Analyst, these are different ways where, again, those requests from more like business analysts folks, they can actually self-serve some of that and, not rely so heavily on the IT teams that are probably getting requests across the business, right? And that is also the thing when you like invest in the platform, everyone wins.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at myself in the mirror, like number one, I was a CPA, a certified public accountant for 5 years, and I got into technology. And when I got into Foundry, I learned all of these low code, no code tools. I don't write code, but the fact that I can build ETL pipelines, the fact that I can construct dashboards using Quiver or Contour, I can put together an ontology that actually has actionability. Then I can compose workshop applications that do a business operation. I'm just the prototype of like anyone that gets into this platform that maybe is a low code, no code user and can actually build something of value. And I don't have to burden myself with knowing 15 different SaaS products. It gets really hard to memorize so many different things and then try and be an integration expert between Alteryx and Power BI and Tableau and Power Apps and yada, yada, yada. You have one platform that can do it all, and it gives you the tooling that allows someone that maybe hasn't been writing code their entire lives to build something of value and solve an important problem that they're facing, which is pretty cool.
All that complexity in those integration points, people underestimate that. And that's why so many times someone like you or business owner who wants to build a solution that solves their problem, they get stuck at the integration point and they have to get engineering involved. And then engineering essentially just ends up taking it over because there's all these integration points to manage now. And it really just limits the effectiveness of a citizen engineer. That was one of the things that was both a an amazing thing about Foundry is that it's end to end and it's opinionated, right? It has this like opinionated way you stack the Lego blocks end to end to build solutions. You learn all about that in the online training and in the community. You can get help. But then there's the downside of that, which a lot of software engineers hate opinionated platforms. So it's like on the technology side. So if you look on to the other end of the spectrum of the hardcore software engineer who doesn't use visual tools, they sometimes would get mad because the platform had an opinion about the way you were supposed to do something, and it was like, and that could be just the integration of the GitHub repositories in Foundry or the build system that they're using with Gradle, and they want to do their own tooling, or there wasn't a local development option, which there is now, but at the time, I think there wasn't a official local development option for pipelines, for example. I think that like Palantir is evolving on these two tracks, right? It's like you have the developer side of the tracks, and they often want different things. And then you have like the citizen engineers who also want sort of different. They like the guardrails and they like being able to achieve things in a low no code environment end to end. It's pairing them together, and this is where I'm finding the value of the force multiplier effect of an engineer that understands the Foundry shaped way to solve the low level engineering problems can amplify dozens of people downstream if done correctly. And like for us, that means we use compute modules almost exclusively. Like I don't use functions anymore. I use compute modules for everything because I can publish those compute module functions into the ontology just like they were, a regular function. But we can use our own development tooling and processes just natively, and we just wrap it in a Docker container and we're good to go. And like that is so much faster as an engineer to iterate now, and I'm happy and I'm like moving quickly and I'm using my native tools that I like. It's like, oh, this is awesome. But then with a single function that I publish solves an entire category of problems that the downstream citizen engineers were facing, and having to stack a lot of things in Foundry that they don't necessarily have to stack and manage that complexity. We just remove a ton of complexity by solving it in code. And I'm convinced that like one good engineer could easily empower multiple teams, maybe 3 or 4 teams building solutions in Foundry, which means like if you're smart as an enterprise, you can really take a lot of spend out of software engineering, out of your technology function, because the highest paid people tend to be those engineers. They're in the shortest supply, which also bottleneck you and like kind of aren't allow you not to, it prohibits you from getting a lot done. But now if you use them effectively in Foundry, not only does the sort of bottleneck get removed and things can start flowing through the pipes, but you need fewer of them because the citizen engineers are building the majority of the solution now. So I'm obsessed with this dynamic. I think it's really important for customers to understand.
Yeah, and I think what the platform provides is optionality for that, right? I was working with a customer once where, on one hand, one day I was working with the engineering team, and another day I'd be working with the business analyst team, and they were both in the platform working. And it was the first time that these two teams have actually been able to work on top of the same data and have come to like the same outcomes in their work. And they told me that after, I used to sort of meet with them both and suggest unifying the meeting. And then they did. And it was the first time in like over 5 years this team had collaborated. And it's because, the engineers were building things in like more like native products, like a lot of in-house building, and then the low-code team or the business analyst team had another third-party software that they were using, all trying to manage all the integrations separately. The engineers were a little bit frustrated that they had to keep preparing tables for this low-code tool, and it was like, okay, well, actually, Foundry is the platform for collaboration in this sense. And, you're talking about deploying, a model in compute modules, which can then actually be triggered by a low code action. And all of these ways in which I think before there used to be this segmentation between low code tools or pro code tools. And ultimately now, because it is the same platform, and you're working off the ontology, we'll always come back to like the ontology being the vessel of collaboration and the core operating system. But that's what's really made the difference here. And so I think we've continued to invest in optionality, whether that's optionality on the data side, that's being able to connect through our virtual tables integration with Snowflake, Databricks, and other kind of enterprise data lakes or warehouses. So you don't need to replicate data or transformations that you've already invested in on the engineering side. It's being able to choose connection to a model that you already have hosted elsewhere. You don't need to replicate that in the platform. Or, hey, you hosted that model elsewhere, but you can actually let the platform do the hosting and kind of the containerization of that model and make it accessible to the business. Okay, then it makes sense to do the migration, but doing the migration is packaging it up in a Docker container and basically uploading it. And so it's taking that friction point or prior friction point and turning it into an advantage where at each point of the architecture, you get your choice. And, maybe finally, I'll just talk on the application side. Yes, we have ways to build React applications in the platform and more code-based solutions, but you can build entirely outside of the platform and still use the ontology and the assets that you've developed, the agents that you've developed in the platform from your external application. So platform APIs and ontology SDK have actually grown the optionality and variability to what workflows you can do.
100%. I mean, we actually deploy our agents on Vercel, but they use the OSDK and are communicating with the ontology that way. What's interesting about it is like the actual business logic that shows up in the compute module functions we publish to the ontology, that business logic is also running natively in Vercel. And the only points when we're running in Vercel, the only thing that's connecting back to Foundry are we're actually doing mutations in the ontology. So we're sort of using it as a backend and storage. Whereas when we deploy that in Foundry for low-code integration, they get the same agent with all the business logic running in a compute module. And it just shows like the code is fully interoperable. You can deploy it anywhere. If you can package it as a Docker container, you can run it wherever you want. You just have to make the right decisions up front on how you decide to build and architect your solutions so you get that benefit. And like in the data engineering space, I think Merck's done some really good work here because like the team, they were the first, I think, to build the offline tools for Foundry. They had something called Foundry DevTools. And they did a lot of work in like, what is the right code forward way they could build, that's most aligned with their development process in Foundry. And they made these offline tools so that they could do previewing locally and like, help accelerate their dev process. But they've also now like advanced a lot with lightweight transforms and use of DuckDB because lightweight is so much more cost effective and fast. And they're engineering it in such a way that they can take those same pipelines and run them anywhere else. The core of the pipelines is portable anywhere. Like to your point, package it in a Docker container. You can run it anywhere, slap whatever API you need for the platform that's actually going to run it on top, whether it's AWS Glue or whether that's, Databricks or whatever. Easy to do. On the engineering side, there's a lot to teach customers about like the ways of working in Foundry that, allow you to make your investment in the code portable, accelerate, the SDLC is accelerated and very fun for the developers, good DevX. And then on the other side is how you're acting as a force multiplier. So like what problems are you solving such that the citizen engineers downstream that are going to ultimately deliver the business value, how are you enhancing their capabilities?
Hey guys, this is Connor from the Code and Connor podcast. I hope you're enjoying the episode. I want to make sure you know about the first ever Palantir user conference, FuturOps. It's in Dallas, Texas from October 22nd and 23rd. If you are a Palantir user, a company that invests in Palantir technologies, investors that follow the companies that serve in this ecosystem, or investors that follow Palantir, you absolutely have to be at this event. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to see amazing applications of the technology, and we'll trade ideas and network. We hope to see you there.
And it's really cool. I see this at DevCon a lot too. Like, because at DevCon you work in teams. A lot of people probably don't know this, and you pair people up. I'm sure people are sitting there behind the scenes, like, okay, this person's an engineer. Let's try and pair them with this team over here. So maybe you talk a little bit about like how you do that.
I think with DevCon, like this is our way of really intentionally investing in the developer community. It's an example of this where, we had FoundryCon, then turned AIPCon, which is a real showcase of the value that our customers have achieved in the platform. And I think it was a lot of, the what that's being built. And we needed a special kind of event, hackathon, in-person, intentional kind of like competition showcase that focused on the how. And so DevCon provides that. It's for builders. It's also organized by builders as well. Very much, we take engineers, our customers who are building in the platform every day, or, maybe have some experience but want to use this as an opportunity to dive a bit deeper. And we take them and we say like, okay, well, we're going to put you in mixed teams with other customers. And we do a lot of intentionality around like ensuring they're roughly the same industry or could like actually get value out of pairing empowering together, experience all of these other things, and we build together. Okay, we've got your dedicated team, now we give everyone like a high level outcome that they should be going against, and the teams drive the rest themselves. They decide what they're going to build, what data they can use, like public, open source, and they spend, the 2 days learning deeply about our product. And we do a lot of announcements around new product offerings. We talk about the roadmap going forward and things that are very relevant to the builders that attend. But then you actually get to take a step out of your day job and build something really ambitious in the platform through a series of workshops, but also just hands-on keyboard, classic hackathon with pizza in the evenings and a really dedicated time to, kind of focus on the how. And I think what a lot of people take away from that is, here's a framework of something I can take to my organization. Like, we're trying to do the document processing or audio processing, or trying to work with Ontology as code. And you take what you learned from DevCon and then you immediately apply it to your business. And it was a way of us to impart that knowledge. Dorian, we talked about imparting the FDE culture and knowledge and how to build in the platform. Well, how better to learn that than through osmosis, through working alongside Palantir engineers for DevCon.
We just need DevCon to be like 10 times bigger. I would love to see it like on par with like an AWS reInvent someday, where you get thousands and thousands of people will come. It's a great place to get startups launched too. Like, if you bringing all these people together, it's an awesome breeding ground for startups and people who are looking to now take advantage of AI. I think Palantir, like Foundry and AIP, is one of the best platforms. If you're looking to build like enterprise AI solutions, like Palantir has so many advantages over the other technologies, not the least of which is things like Marketplace, where you can package up your solution, ship it to a customer stack. Like, in an era of AI, that's really important, because if you can do that, if all, your only investment is in the software, you're not eating those tokens, right? Like, in a traditional SaaS model, you're paying for those tokens. You're paying for all the compute to process the data. That is a massive investment that you're going to need. If you just package up the software and ship it over to the customer stack, it's like you pay none of the compute, you don't pay for the tokens, and the data never leaves the four walls of the customer. That is massive advantage. So like, you can have serious alpha in this space if you're leveraging AIP and Foundry to build solutions. So I just love the idea of like 1,000 startups launching at these things. That was really cool. And you can find a business person that actually knows the domain. Like, I was watching this video the other day, this guy Theo, who does these pretty interesting developer videos, but like, he was talking about an investment he made recently in a car wash software business. And it was started by a guy who's not an engineer. He's been in the car wash space for 20 years. He knows everything about car washes. And that person's able to now like effectively work with the software engineering side of the house, use through some vibe coding solutions and other things that allow him to codify his knowledge and expertise into a software platform. If you can do that, I mean, these DevCons is a great way to meet people that know something about business too. And if you pair them up with an amazing engineer and you leverage AI in Foundry correctly, oh my God, can you create some serious value out there in the world? So I'm super passionate about DevCon. I want to see it grow. And I want to see lots of startups coming out of this thing.
Dorian, you mentioned, so DevCon, I have not been to this event, which I've been on the periphery. So I've met people out for drinks and that pizza after. But if you can get more business analysts, people that maybe aren't comfortable in code coming to these events, you can get that same blend, Zoe, that you were talking about, that you can bring those parties together that traditionally may have sat in IT or traditionally sat in the business. Because then, again, you can pick up some of these low code, no code tools and platform and add value to a solution. But you'll build the scar tissue at events like this, where you're paired with people building a solution that you maybe haven't tackled before, and you divvy up the work. And you can add things, particularly in the UIs of the Ontology or workshop, obviously. And that's huge. Building that scar tissue, doing that with high class software engineers who might be, working exclusively in code, and you build something in Foundry, and those two worlds collide in something that then you get to present at is remarkable. That there can be an event for that, but also hugely valuable to bring back to your company. The second thing I'll say is, when you are at an event like this, where things are actually being built, where you have business backgrounds and you have engineering backgrounds, just seeing what everyone else is doing and then being able to bring that back to mothership or wherever you work, unbelievable. Like, I've experienced this at AIPCon a number of times, but I guarantee it's the same thing here. You watch someone else build something, you will connect the dots of a problem statement that impacts your business or your day-to-day life. And then you have a rubric or a framework to maybe not exactly apply, but take all the ideas and much of how it was built back to your problem statement.
Maybe we can talk about startups for a bit, because we did actually launch our first startup fellowship and the cohort 0, and we actually platformed all of the startups that kind of made it to the final and had the best sort of final products. We actually launched them at DevCon, and so we provided a space for them to talk through. That's Rachel. Talk through what they had built. I think really our leadership believes that the next best startup will be built on Palantir. And I think, sometimes that's been phrased as, the next Palantir will be built on Palantir. And I do think, again, all of the infrastructure around these models is going to make the difference for actually putting AI agents into production and having the right context, logic, and actions that these models can take as the frame and the basis for actually succeeding when it comes to AI workflows. And so you have a great number of ambition coming from the startup community right now. And I think the ones that will succeed and really be able to put their product into production will need to have all of those requirements. And essentially the full tech stack that they're looking for are things that we have available in our platform. And so, to double down again on the developer community, what better way to really invest in that community than to invest right from the inception? And so we have spent, kind of the last year really investing in startups. And the Startup Fellowship is that. It's a group of, select 20 startups, and we platform a few of them then at like more public events. Like, as I said, we did this at DevCon last time, and we give them an opportunity to, in 6 to 8 weeks, build an end-to-end backend and integration of their product or extend their product with our backend. And then, we give them a platform to talk about what they've built, bring investors, others that are of interest to that, to really start this, kind of Palantir startup fellowship of the investment that we're doing with this community. And I think a lot of the product improvements that we've been talking about have been the reason why this has been successful. And, we're running our second fellowship right now. And, we hope to kind of continue investing in the startup community.
How many companies get to, I mean, I'm sure it says add to wait list, so there's probably a big list. But, one, how many people get to go through a cohort? You said there's, 0, or first cohort. How many went through that? How many are expected for the next one? And what's the rigor of the application process?
There's about 20 in each fellowship. I think for the first fellowship, we got about 100 or so applications. For the second, it was hundreds. And so I was not on the selection team, but I know they were working really hard to evaluate each of the startups that came through. I think it's going to be, and that's everything from startups that have, basically no funding. They have just started. They haven't built anything, to maybe like Series A, Series B startups that have some form of product market fit, but are really trying to get in with enterprise customers, which, if you've built an MVP of your product, maybe you have 1 or 2 customers that have really launched your initial product. How do you do that at scale? How do you do that in a way where your security infrastructure is something that's going to get through a security review? All of these questions start coming up, and they look to Palantir and our software products to basically be the foundation that helps them get through those reviews because of the rigor of security and governance in the platform. But going back to applications, so yeah, it's a understanding of current financials, current product. There's a video that is submitted as well, and then it's sort of like, yeah, what do you want to get out of this? And we take the rigor to like meet people and take them through the process. And then yeah, as I mentioned, we're on our second cohort now, but we've had different initiatives investing in startups, but this is definitely by far the most hands-on. And I think we're kind of like the American Tech Fellowship, where there is a graduation path. We are also building that as well. Like, how do we continue to invest in your startup post the fellowship?
Yeah, I think this point around scaling and getting into enterprise customers, it's super challenging. First off, I think a lot of startups don't realize how long you're going to be spending if you don't have a platform like Foundry to build your solution on, how long you're going to be spending in compliance and security reviews. It's going to be years before they even bring the product in, So like, it's kind of like FedStart, where it's like Foundry is this natural accelerator where if you platform your startup on Foundry and your target is enterprise, you shave 2 years and probably several $1 million off the cost of building your system and go straight to delivery, And I think I think the downside, the negatives, and I've met with investors, and when you tell them you're building your startup on Foundry, it's like it's a positive and a negative. Yes, like some parts they like, some parts they don't like. I think as the customer count grows and you get deeper and deeper penetration into the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 1000, a lot of those arguments go away. And I see no trajectory in which Palantir slows down in doing that. It's definitely going up and to the right. So from my perspective, the thing I would try to convince investors of is like, we shave millions off the cost, we shave years off the delivery, and we grow with them, because now is the time to get in here. It is not in 2 years from now, you're going to be competing against everyone in this space. And right now you have a unique opportunity. And so like getting this message out to developers out there so that they understand from day zero why they should make the decision or not to platform their solution on Foundry, they at least know what the trade-offs are. I think getting that information out is super important to them with concrete examples of like, here are the certs you automatically inherit. Here's how you ship your solution. Here's how you don't pay for any of the computer data processing, right? You don't even have to run any infrastructure, if you don't want to. Like you can actually design whole software applications and ship them through Marketplace, like I was saying earlier. These are super important things, I think, for people building startups to understand from day zero.
I think there's something that's important for people to understand, which is there isn't a ceiling, right? Palantir has a ton of customers, especially within the Fortune 1000, Fortune 2000. But our customers don't have to be your customers. Again, with OSDK, you can use our platform as the back end, but still very much manage your front end and your users. Like I'm thinking through some of the startups that we're working with, their customers vary. Like they've got frontline workers who are using a mobile app and that's their product, right? But that product is being fed and really fueled by the ontology and the OSDK integration. And so there is no ceiling or limit on what your customer set is. Though I would argue that Palantir's customer set is definitely an enterprise suite that you would want to be working with, but it doesn't need to be the same. And we've worked with startups to sort of help them with some of these conversations or cracking the enterprise customer. But in other cases, they are using us as their kind of like security standard powered by Palantir, but they are still going off and owning their own like sales process and really building that kind of unique value proposition outside. So it really should only be a positive. And to your point around saving 2 years of development time, in the age of AI, that's everything. Time is everything. And so I do, when I'm speaking to startups, like this is the thing that I'm really pointing to.
Well, and some of those certifications you can get, whether you're going after the public sector, the DoD, the healthcare space. If you don't have some of these certifications, if you don't follow the right guidance inside your solution, you will never make a sale. It's non-starter. So multiple years, sure, but also just being able to compose a solution to meet those criteria can be something that you may never be able to achieve because some of these regulations are really, really complicated. So yeah, they can't be understated what you kind of get out of the box with Foundry.
Right now, this is the worst the platform will ever be. Where you're adding features constantly. I'm really excited about MMDP. We've been using branching internally. It's a huge improvement over the old way we used to have to kind of manage branches and sync merging them all together. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the roadmap, where you're making investments for these sweeteners that developers need to understand, like, 6 months from now, you're going to have these additional things you need to consider as to why Palantir and why Foundry, why AIP. So maybe talk a little bit about the product roadmap.
The platform is always changing and evolving, and even the roadmap itself is changing and evolving, but I can definitely talk you through some themes. So I think MMDP, which is the multi-modal data plane, is a huge investment for us. And so breaking that down, like the models that we're integrating with, they go beyond just textual based, data. And I think we're also trying to push workflows beyond just structured tabular data as well. And so if we think about the full variety of data types that you can be working with, we want to make sure our platform can support all of those data types, and also that you can operationalize data that is almost buried within these different data types as well. And so that's a deeper investment in media sets, deeper investment in, kind of connection to different data sources where, we don't necessarily need to sync in that data. So that federated data or virtual tables integration, but really being able to handle all structured, unstructured data that would fuel the ontology of your business. And so deeper investment in working with audio, working with video, or how to do more like complex document processing and what that looks like in the platform. So there's going to be this continued effort of investment within, data comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. And, we want to be able to utilize that full suite of information within the ontology. And so, deeper investment in time series, deeper investment in streaming, and all of this sort of structured and unstructured data as the foundation and base for the ontology.
We're at some of your customers now where MMDP is the strategy. Like it's literally everyone is embracing open data formats and deciding that this sort of processing data without moving it and replicating it, that's how we want to do things in the future. And those mandates are pretty firm. They're coming from the CDO. They're rolling it out across everywhere. I think it's just a matter of time supporting all the various formats. I think it's like Hudi, Iceberg, and Delta. And then, support for the various platforms, whether that's Snowflake or BigQuery or Databricks. But this was the thing when I heard about it, I was like, oh, finally, we have an answer to like, where does Foundry fit in my stack? Because we get that question everywhere from the CDO typically is like, where does this fit in my stack? And so it's like, finally, we have this answer. And it's, I think it changed the game almost overnight. It really unblocked a lot of the resistance I would typically get from the CIO or the CDO or CTO about adopting Foundry because they were very confused about like where it fit in the data processing landscape. This was amazing. And I think it's really, like I said, unblocked a lot of the resistance we would like typically face.
That adversarial relationship between like the business teams that want to use Foundry and a chief data office that didn't have this solution was killing momentum at large enterprises. So can't be understated how welcome this advancement is for Palantir customers.
I do feel I have to mention that as well as any storage, you can also use any compute. And so being able to push down compute into some of these compute processors or getting Snowflake to run a pipeline builder kind of transformation, but actually that compute's running in Snowflake specifically. We have it here. We've pushed down like for Spark, for Databricks. It's really, bring your own runtime or commercial engine, and like we can push down the compute there. And I think this is an area of, okay, we're providing deeper optionality across storage and across compute. And the final area is going to be for models. And so we've already become, the central platform where you can use any commercially available large language model. And we have a full spectrum around that. But we also kind of have the ability for you to bring your own model. So regardless of whether you've got a custom GPT that you want to embed or you've got a hypertune model that you want to include, it's not, okay, we have this opinionated view on exactly what you need. It's you can bring your own as well. And we have a full spectrum of ways to control that and integrate it with existing applications, or again, your external application through the SDK. And that kind of three pillar of any storage, any compute, any model is like a driving function for a lot of the tech decisions that we're making.
The point around 80 model is super important because I think small language models are going to end up being really prevalent in the future around business functions, like domain specific small language models that help in the performance of specific tasks. It's really easy to expose, like if you have a model running somewhere with an inference endpoint, to go in here and expose it in the platform. The reason that's really valuable is now that can be used in the ontology anywhere any other model is used, right? So like AIP logic, you want to use it in AIP logic, you can, in AIP Agent Studio and any of these other places in platform. It's just automatically, like when we were talking earlier about how developers empower citizen engineers, like this is the type of force multiplier effect I'm talking about, because the AI engineering team that builds a small language model that is optimized for a specific domain of function, tasks, and deploys it in Foundry now has empowered hundreds of business users with new form of intelligence. Like it doesn't get better than that, right? So like this is really cool. It's a super important point. And I think that ability to package and bring your own model into AIP is going to be really, really important in the future as small language models kind of take off.
I was just going to add, like, how forward thinking this was years ago when I don't even know. Everything's moving so fast. If it was even years ago, maybe it was months ago. But, the whole thing about LLMs are a commodity. They're a raw material that Karp was saying on stage, and then it informed the product in the sense that you're going to get any of the models you want. Well, everyone else had one and everyone was competing for that type of thing. You guys basically said, use any model, bring your own model even. Now you're seeing Databricks and you're seeing Microsoft saying, oh, you can bring your own model. You can use anything. It's like, yeah, well, rest assured, we already had that in Foundry, meaning we're years ahead. So for developers who are getting in here and using this, it's not just that you have the ability to access models or bring your own models or get to small language models like Dorian mentioned, but it's that you have a suite of tools that allow you to do this pretty well, that have gone through years of development to allow these things to be used easily.
Palantir's like Switzerland in the LLM race, it's pretty cool. And like, it's not like you're not fighting over here with Microsoft. Like, no, you need to use OpenAI, or over here with Amazon. Palantir's just Switzerland. We bring everyone together and bring whatever you want. It's pretty cool.
Hey guys, this is Connor from the Code and Connor podcast. I hope you're enjoying the episode. I want to make sure you know about the first ever Palantir user conference, FuturOps. It's in Dallas, Texas from October 22nd and 23rd. If you are a Palantir user, a company that invests in Palantir technologies, investors that follow the companies that serve in this ecosystem, or investors that follow Palantir, you absolutely have to be at this event. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to see amazing applications of the technology, and we'll trade ideas and network. We hope to see you there.
Selfishly, the thing I most want to hear about is Marketplace, because that is... our business is predicated on Marketplace. Like we really believe that the enterprise solutions we're building will all be delivered as Marketplace applications. We want them to run inside the customer's four walls. They're all intelligence systems. They're AI systems that do a lot of back office work. But I heard recently the Marketplace team has grown substantially. There's been a huge investment.
Marketplace really, I'm not sure if you know sort of the history of where this came from, but actually it really started with our work with the NHS in the UK. It was, with each kind of hospital, they all belong to a trust, and each trust like rolls up into another kind of level of the organization. And so being able to take individual like kind of surgery waitlist applications and then bring that package to another hospital, to another trust, to really build this compounding value for the health service over there, like that's the place that this application really like came from. It was, sort of how do we build applications and ship them quickly across different contexts and planes. And I think the ambition there hasn't changed. And so it's just really how do we deepen our investment in the use? And I think it's changed from I need to take this same application and plug in new data assets to run this application. And I think the next generation of what Marketplace is going to be used for is actually release management. It's how do you manage your dev, test, prod within the platform. I think we've always supported branching and versioning, and now it's like, okay, well, you can also do environment separation, and this is the tool to do that. There are some instances where branching and versioning can only get you so far, and so managing your staging environments and how do we build a better rubric for deploying AI into production, that's going to be the backbone of Marketplace, and managing environments and sort of shipping products between, even within the same customer. But we know that Marketplace is also being used greatly to ship products to other Foundry instances. And so almost this like customer to customer collaboration. I think we're seeing that a lot in our partner network as well. And so deeper support for different applications in Marketplace, deeper support for release management and the different applications that allow you to do that. And branching and versioning, ensuring that those branching and versioning is being done across the entire platform. And so that's, Foundry branching and everything that you can do there, where you're actually branching the ontology and you're branching the workshop application that you're building off the branch of the ontology, and all of those things becoming ever more seamless is a huge part. And again, I think that focus of getting AI workflows into production and ensuring that you have the right guardrails around doing that, it's essentially how does the platform support the developer to do that? And so these are the general Marketplace investments that are being made.
One of the things I also selfishly love is ontology interfaces. It changed the way, because we do use Marketplace both at customers to move between environments. We've been at a couple where basically they have separate dev ontologies and separate prod ontologies. They're not really doing QA too much, but it's and that's usually due to different permissions being in production on the production ontology than what the developers will have. And so they want these separate ontologies, and we would move between the dev ontology to the production ontology by installing via Marketplace. But one of the challenges there was always like managing the objects, and what's cool is like with interfaces, I don't have to explicitly work with the ontology object anymore, concrete object. I can define the shape of the object, and then I can build against that and then map that at runtime onto whatever a concrete ontology object can fulfill the interface. I think this is like a key design decision that needs to be thought of now, because it will make that process of like going from dev to prod, whether those are separate ontologies or from your version of the ontology that you're developing at your lab into the customer's version of the ontology. And it will also solve a fundamental problem with foundational ontologies, which is traditionally defining a data model that would be used across a bunch of companies it didn't work because they were too shallow of a definition. Like every company is kind of its own snowflake around the data concepts and whatnot that they have. And so ontology interfaces are this like great breakthrough, in my opinion, that solves that problem, because you can define a minimum viable interface for the solution you're building to work. And then you can map that on to whatever the customer has decided fulfills it.
And then the final two products that I want to provide like a kind of roadmap insight for are going to be AI FDE and AIP Analyst. So AI FDE is essentially our way of extending our forward deployed engineers, giving them access to, kind of increase efficiency by supporting with analyzing data, building pipelines, building out the ontology, building applications. And it is in kind of a kind of chat-like interface where with each kind of step you are drilling down on the problem that you're solving for your customer. And you can kind of see the birth of AI FDE as a way of, Palantir is helping so many businesses to operationalize their business and use AI models as a new form of labor to expedite value. Well, we have to also be, looking in the mirror and figuring out how we can use it internally. And so there have been a ton of internal initiatives for us to use LLMs and to use our product to expedite and automate certain processes that used to be either manual or semi-manual, or honestly, we use a third-party tool, and we've been able to recover those that technology. And now AI FDE is a good example of that, where we're actually able to extend our FDEs and help with them to kind of increase efficiency. And so this is available also to our customers. And so again, the builders at our customers are using AI FDE as a means to build more quickly, build out with good practices, and get to that product and get to value faster. AIP Analyst is a way of, I've had several conversations with customers where, they want to put all their data in one place and then just ask a agent, hey, which plant has a constriction on production right now? Or what's our highest performing location? What's our highest performing seller? And there are tools that can do this in isolation, right? You drop documents or a specific table and it's able to understand. But if the ontology that you're building, and our customers have been building their ontology for years, is robust enough where you can ask these questions and essentially point it to the ontology, which is now in the context of your business, you can actually get some results that are quite significant. And so AIP Analyst is that, and you'll see more of this in even coming weeks, where you can now now in a very natural language way, ask these business questions of your organization. And this essentially agent is going to look through your ontology and figure out whether to respond with text, whether to respond with a graph or an analysis. And this is also going to be something that, I'm going to see more, I think, business users or even executives building and using, or essentially executives searching through their business and asking these high value questions and being able to get concrete results that are based in the ontology.
Connor and I worked on a project pretty recently where we were working with a direct to consumer, like retailer, and they wanted to be able to ask questions like, what are my top performing SKUs? What markets are trending up and down? Where should I shift my marketing spends? Like all these kind of things that normally you're going to the analyst team, spending days or weeks trying to get to an answer. And by then the market's changed anyway. Like things change quickly, especially like into something like, online direct to consumer, fashion or whatever. And so, but the thing we always found is like the trick is, to your point earlier, if you have a robust enough ontology, right? So like you have to be able to give the good signals and provide the right data so that the model can produce a plausible scenario or answer to the problem you're exposing. I think a lot of that, useful tools we found in Foundry are things like Foundry rules that can do signal amplification, where you can put together many signals and then combine them and to get a better, clearer picture of like what's actually happening. We've even been experimenting with machinery as a business process modeling tool so that we can both provide a better understanding for the model of how processes function and also get more feedback going so we can see how the process evolves as we make changes. But I think there's something to machinery as also being a really interesting source of grounding when we're doing these analyst questions. We haven't figured it out exactly yet, but we do feel providing an accurate picture of how business processes work is fundamental for the model figuring out a plausible scenario. But like, I think the trick will always be like that ontology design. That's why it's so important as an enterprise to invest in that. Like we recently had the folks from Kavanaugh Construction on, but they talked about essentially how they created a role for both a Palantir FDE and their a person at their company to manage the evolution of the ontology. This is why, right? Like if you have a good ontology, you can get amazing answers and you can take advantage of things like AI Analyst. It's the companies that don't do that where things sort of fall over.
Today, we covered the Palantir developer community and the efforts from Palantir to grow it across DevStacks, the American Tech Fellowship, the Startup Fellowships, the community page, and DevCon. We also covered the Palantir roadmap and where they are investing in more and better tooling for us all to use. Zoe, thank you so much for your time. We have future episodes coming, more and more guests of partners, customers, content creators, Palantir, other tech companies, you name it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.